How's everybody doing out there? This is Duane Fletcher with Fletcher Community Media. Okay, I need to make a quick podcast because there's a ongoing issue here where there's a bunch of stuff happening. I'm gonna make a quick podcast here. Some of you may know me by the books that I talk about around town and at the city council meetings, the podcast, things like that. Fox Hunt by Duane Fletcher uh, talks about how they tried to pull a oligarch move and sell a power company here in Jacksonville, Florida. Very good book. Apparently, about 6 years later, the FBI ended up raiding the this fictitious warehouse in this book. Like they're trying to say that I was crazy, that this is some type of cockamamie conspiracy theory. And then 6 years later, they end up having to raid the same doggone place I was talking about in this book. And this is basically what I want to talk about today. But I got some other stuff here. Excuse me, codename Lionfish, where they caught a Chinese spy here on the military base. Basically, the guy was supposed to be teaching the Navy SEALs and Marine Corps recon people how to use this new top secret equipment, but he was selling the equipment back to China. This is a really good book, also action novel. Um, Dance of the Mongoose. Dance of the Mongoose. This talks about the weeks just before the coronavirus lockdowns and the coronavirus quarantines a couple of years ago. This is a really good book too. Talks about the stock market a little bit also. This one, but okay, now here is some of my new stuff here. The Battle of Flechet. This one is like it's kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. They're looking for relics and things like that, but it's basically about Napoleon Bonaparte's campaign against Russia 200 years ago, in contrast to what's going on today in Ukraine right now. Um, the Nibble next talks about a set of twins, Russian hitmen that came to Jacksonville. Um, they did all kind of stuff, and it's crazy what went on with this. This is a really good book. Also, the Nibble next, and the one that's creating all the controversy, The Black Hand by Duane Fletcher. Okay, this one talks about how there's this tennis pro from Serbia that allegedly doubles as an assassin for the KGB. Okay, this is a really good book too. Very good conspiracy type stuff. It's a really good book. Okay, so you can get all the stuff on blurb.com. Blurb.com, BLURB, blurb.com. Now, the issue that I want to talk about today has to do with dirty cops in my town. As some of you may know, I talk about, if you've ever been to some of the city council meetings, I talk about corruption heavily and at the city council meetings that talk about the different stuff that's going on with corruption and dirty cops. I lodge a bunch of complaints with internal affairs and the integrity department at JSO. Well, basically, I ended up bumping into some dirty cops a couple of years ago, and it just, basically was ridiculous what the allowance that they afforded themselves to just run around and lie about stuff, investigate people for nothing, take one complaint and switch it around and give it to the bad guy. They take your complaint, give it to the bad guy, switch it back and forth. They dress people up like you, try and frame you. They drive a car. They drive a car like yours and try and put you under surveillance and all this kind of stuff like that. And the thing is that I talk about corruption a lot, and I probably have pissed off a lot of the police here in town over the years, and I expect for some things to be wrong because it's no, you can't expect to complain and then people basically they like they're not going to say anything. They're wrong. They're completely in the wrong, but they do. I face backlash at different times for my complaints. And one thing I've began to notice recently over the last couple of years is that basically the police downtown, they won't take my complaints. Okay, they won't talk to me. about the complaint. They won't take the complaint at times. They won't give me a police report about what I'm complaining about. But what he will do subsequently, systematically, is allow someone to just mysteriously bump into me after the event and then make up the same thing that I said and try to say I'm the person that's the problem. This is something that they've been doing on now. This is basically what I talked about in my new book that's coming out. I got a new one that's coming out called The Black Hand Part 2. The Black Hand Part 2 is going to talk about it heavily, about them having fake call centers that intercept 911 calls and they switch your complaints around and all this kind of stuff like that. Um, as a matter of fact, I believe it's why Disney rejected Governor DeSantis's offer for them to have a 911 contractor instead of 911 services in Orlando. And I think that it possibly is one of the reasons why Disney rejected the 911 contractor that was offered to them. Because, if y'all never heard anything about this argument, but basically Governor DeSantis has tried to bogard his way into onto the board of directors for Disney World, and they've had an ongoing argument over the years and stuff like that. And recently, during this process, he uh he offered them 911 contractors, where basically your 911 call goes to a contractor at a call center instead of to the sheriff's department. And I think Disney World rejected this, and I think I know why, because it appears to me that there's some kind of monkey business going on. Like when they set their sights on stuff, they start mixing stuff around. The first thing they do is try and take police powers um out of your repertoire. So you can't call the police anymore. Anytime you call the police, the cop that responds is going to flip around your complaint and try and say that you're the person that needs to be investigated, not what you're talking about. Okay? Or that the other person said this. The other person said this. The other person made this complaint about you. And it's a bunch of bullshit that's going on down here in Florida. It's Florida bullshit. So, but I've noticed something that's going on and it needs to be addressed, because it's like a loophole where he has the governor, the sheriff's department, Homeland Security, whichever one of them's responsible and has probably a handful of these complaints right now. Whichever one of them has a handful of these type of complaints right now, whoever it is. Um, I'm not singling anybody out. It could be the sheriff's department. It could be Homeland Security. It could be uh, whoever, whatever that has the FDLE. It could be anybody. So what I notice is that they won't take my complaint downtown. Okay, they won't take my complaint downtown. But what he'll do is he'll let somebody bump into me and say that they heard me talking about such and such and such, and they take the same complaint and flip it around and aim it towards me, like I needs to be investigated or something like that. One of the most recent times that this happened has to do with this book, where basically I feel as though I was vetted and investigated rigorously by whoever it was that had to do with this the tennis player that I'm talking about in the book. This fictitious character tennis player that I'm talking about in this book, where um, they they said that this guy was being discriminated against because he wouldn't take the vaccine. When in actuality, in reality, they were discriminating against me because I wrote this book and that I was black. A black guy wrote a book, so they discriminated against me. And it looked to me like what the authorities in Florida did, that were lording over this issue, that they dropped everything and ran off to save the tennis player, who was the bad guy in the book, this fictitious book. Okay, so, but then, of course, what happened? Months and Sundays later, the New York Open happened. Everybody got sick, and the tennis player won. And that was the complaint that was coming from the other tennis players, not just Duane Fletcher, that did some research on it. Okay, so all these other tennis players got sick. I've read off a list of them before. But what I noticed is that it got really, really quiet after that happened. Got really, because beforehand it's like, oh my God, we need to watch this guy. Oh my God, we need to vet this guy. He wrote a book. That book's gonna start World War III. When in actuality, um, some of you who went over Homeland Security's head, who told you no, well, that turns out that might have been just them covering their butts, and that's why the Homeland Security might have just been covering their butts by telling everybody no, not to let the tennis player in, because that's what it's starting to look like now. Like they weren't sincere. They were just trying to cover their butts by telling everybody not to let this certain tennis player in. But the thing is that these issues are being flipped around, and it's resulting in adverse situations, whereas um certain uh certain theaters, certain issues that are going on, that need this information viewed in a truthful, uh true blue light, and it's not happening, because what they're doing is they're making the bad guy the hero, and they've done this a couple of times. um Here's another one that I want to bring up that needs to be discussed about here. This other book, okay, Fox Hunt. Oh my God, there's a black guy. He wrote a book. He's talking about the solar panel people. Oh my God. Oh my God, we got to watch this guy. Oh my God, the solar panel people are in danger because this guy wrote a book. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, now fast forward 6 years later, uh, Homeland Security had to get off their asses and go next door and raid this warehouse that I was talking about in the book. Well, what are you going to say? Is that's not the same warehouse he's talking about? Oh, no, now, wait a minute. The warehouse talks about New Berlin Road. The guy's trapped in a warehouse right next door to a Homeland Security building. He's trapped in a warehouse right next to a Homeland Security building. Uh, in the New Berlin area, New Berlin Road. And so what are you going to say about this? So the thing is, what it looks like is that these policemen are dirty. Okay, no two ways to say it. Dirty. They're dirty cops. And they're taking payouts. Now, another group of them that was doing this was there was a group of Jamaican drug dealers here in town, and that basically me and one of them got into an altercation years and years ago, and after it was over with, I was out the street and he still kept sending people after me. So I ended up speaking publicly at city council meetings and stuff like that. And because he had like dirty cops working for him, and they would harass you, they would break in your house, they would do this, they would do that, and there was no oversight whatsoever. So he had a bunch of dirty cops. So what I did was I went and got clean cops in the form of city council members to listen to the argument. So that that they just turned a blind eye to the Jamaican guy selling drugs or whatever solved itself, because years later the DEA stepped in recently. I think it was last year. The DEA finally stepped in recently and raided this guy's place that where that was sending people after me. What I believe that he was sending people after me. Okay, so um that being said, now um these are some really, really, really uh bad things to be flipping around. That's like you say, hey man, there's a house on fire. And y'all send over the fire department. There's a house on fire. And when the fire department get there, he hits you with the water hose instead of the house that's on fire. and they've done this repeatedly. And then they said, and then there's been no apologies. There's been no arrests. Has Mr. Fletcher ever been arrested for making threats towards a Jamaican drug dealer? No. Has Mr. Fletcher was Mr. Fletcher ever arrested for writing this book and stuff that he said in the book? No. Has Mr. Fletcher ever been investigated for the solar panel people? No. I mean, well, yeah, they investigated me, but has Mr. Fletcher ever been arrested for writing this book about the solar panel people? No. Mr. Fletcher has never been arrested for writing a book about the solar panel. Yet and still, repeatedly, that it's either Homeland Security, the FDLE, JSO, is some type of law enforcement official that basically repeatedly takes Mr. Fletcher's complaints and flips them around. He repeatedly takes Mr. Fletcher's complaints and flips them around. He repeatedly takes Mr. Fletcher's complaints and flips them around. The other issue was the about the Jamaican guys. He takes the complaints and flip them around. And because first thing you do is, like, if you notice a bunch of dirty cops hanging around lying about stuff, the first thing you think about is that, well, they finna try and frame me for something. So to keep from being framed, I had to start speaking at city council meetings where there's politicians sitting there that's not hanging out in on crack street getting bribes in an envelope and all this kind of stuff like that. So, to keep from being framed by them, uh, I had to start speaking publicly and writing action novels and things like that to document the events in my own words instead of letting them make up things for me to have said. Basically, they get a group of guys together. One of them dresses up like you. He goes out, commits all kind of mayhem, stuff like that. Now, I was telling you before that they had a guy here. Here's another one that happened. It's in here somewhere. Hold on. This is another issue that happened right here, and it has to do with. See if I can pull this out here without knocking everything. Oh my God, Mark. You knocked everything down. Oh, damn. Okay, let's see if I can pull this. Okay, here we go. Here's another one. They take Mr. Fletcher's complaints and they flip it around. Now, I filmed this documentary movie a while ago. Somebody dressed up like me was selling it, asking for money. People came back to me, told me about it. Somebody even called the feds, called the FBI and said something about it. Now, what actually went on is that the FBI walked right past me because I was not a bootlegger. I'm not a bootlegger. This is my own movie that I filmed. It's a documentary movie that I filmed myself. So I'm not a bootlegger. But apparently someone meant to do me harm by calling the FBI and sending them out to the parking lots and stuff like that. To, to say that, and they told the cops that I was a bootlegger, but that's completely not true. The FBI in Jacksonville, Florida, walked right past me because they knew that I am not a bootlegger. I have a copy of my own movie that I'm selling. And they arrested the bootleggers. And then apparently the person that called the FBI, possibly the person that called the FBI, ended up getting arrested themselves a couple of years later for something else. Um, so that's what actually happened with that. Now there's been numerous times that they've done this. They take Mr. Fletcher's stuff and they flip it around and they try and call the cops on Mr. Fletcher. They take Mr. Fletcher's complaints and his theories, they flip it around, they try and call the cops on Mr. Fletcher to watch him instead. They take Mr. Fletcher's action novel material and his notes, they flip it around to suit themselves so they can take bribes and stuff like that. Now, what's funny is that this place right here was right next door to Homeland Security. I believe this is one of the warehouses that they was forced to raid. Now, I talked about this too one other time before that basically the FBI had to like school Homeland Security on what to look for because they was right next door to this place, and they were watching apparently Duane Fletcher instead of the bad guys that's in the book. So, and they've done this repeatedly, 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 and they need to be prosecuted for it. I remember not too long ago, I was in the sheriff's department talking about some harassment where this guy was walking past my mother's house. This was maybe about a month ago, something like that. And one of the cops that I know from from some of the city council meetings, he walked in and say, "Tell him about the spies. Tell him about the Tell him about the spies, Mr. Fletcher." Like it was a joke. Like, like he's giving me shit. I know he's gonna give me, because I come in there complain about dirty cops sometimes. So you can't expect uh them to be take what I have to say with a grain of salt. I absorb that. I didn't get mad with him because they're pretty cool. Some of the cops are pretty cool, but some of them are dirty. And that's just the bottom line. So I absorbed that. But he was like, "Tell him about the spot." While I was trying to put in my complaint, he's about to, "Hey, Mr. Fletcher, tell him." I was like, I'm thinking in my mind, yeah, I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna write that. Now you're making me look like Bruce Willis now, dude. You're making this action novel character look awesome when you make jokes like that, because I know what's gonna happen. Eventually, that same cop is probably gonna have to eat his hat. He's going to have to eat his hat, where somebody at the sheriff's department gets tied up with something that's going on with some Russians or something like that. It did happen before. Officer Michael Classy, I believe it was, that worked for JSO, got caught up with some Russian pill people, Russian pill poppers or Russian pill mill crew or something like that, and they was trying to launder money or blah blah blah, whatever happened. But it's happened before where one of their cops has got tied in with the Russians and stuff like that, for selling prescription medications illegally and things like that. So, but the thing is, like I said, they're repeatedly doing this, and what this has created is a loophole for the Russians that are in Florida, the Serbians that are in Florida, the ones that are doing the most. Who's doing the most? It's the Russian guy under the table. It's the Serbian guy under the table. So basically, they've created this loophole. It's the Chinese spies under the table. You know, it's Chinese spies the Chinese spies under the table. You know what I'm saying? There's Russian hitmen under the table. Um, but the thing is, like I said, this void of injustice that has been levied against Mr. Fletcher's shoulder, which is my shoulder. I'm Mr. Fletcher. This void of injustice that has been levied against my shoulder, where basically the police are dirty and they're allowing this guy, different people, to lean on me. Okay, and the void has created a loophole where basically they get to do whatever, and they swear to God nobody's privy to real information, because what he did, one of the things to do, they'll dress a guy up like you and try and make you look crazy or sound crazy. Now, this is a professional uh like a play that intelligence networks run. It's called Agent of Influence and Agent Provocateur. Whereas one person dresses up like you and they look crazy, they sound crazy on purpose, they look crazy on purpose, and then this other person notices it. And they swear to God it's you that said it and that looks crazy and said something crazy, but it's not. And basically, I have video footage of different times that I bumped into somebody dressed up like me, and I believe that they've been doing stuff like this. There's been an issue about spy equipment here, so I would imagine that they're probably intercepting phone calls also too to 911. There was an issue here recently on Edgewood Avenue about the phone lines being tapped and hacked and repeatedly and stuff like that. AT&T had to send out a bunch of trucks to fix the phone lines and all this kind of stuff like that. So they have spy equipment, but and that's what I believe that they were looking for in this book right here when the FBI and Homeland Security had to raid this place. Um, is basically has they have capability of intercepting phone calls, intercepting emails before they go out, remixing it, and then sending it out. And I think that's what they were looking for. Well, basically, the FBI had to school Homeland Security on what to look for. And if you were from Florida, you would say that's a damn shame because Homeland Security is right next door to this building. And I know they can't say, oh, well, that's not the warehouse he was talking about. Well, I don't know. Is it? Is it live or is it Memorex? Because they forced Homeland Security to get up off their ass and go next door and check out the Chinese solar panel company that was right next door to them. And like I don't know, like I said again, some of you don't know how this works, but I've seen it done many times. With them being right next door to them, it's possible that they were like the Homeland Security guys might have been bumping into the solar panel executives at McDonald's on their lunch break and getting bribes and stuff like that. That's what goes on when somebody like that moves right next door to them and stuff like that. So you have to pay attention to it, even if you think that it's crazy, because that's what'll happen. Sooner or later, you're gonna have to eat your hat. Sooner or later you're going to have to eat your hat. Now I know that they're probably upset that they had because they were calling me crazy, So the there is a void of injustice that law enforcement has levied against Mr. Fletcher. Okay, there's a void. They won't take my complaint, but what they'll do is they'll let somebody bump into me and say the same thing, and then say that Mr. Fletcher must be involved in it. And it's total horseshit. As total horseshit that somewhere at FDLE or Homeland Security or JSO, there's probably a mountain, a mountain of coercive uh, bullshit that they've mixed together, facetiousness to let somebody lie on me so they don't have to take my complaint, so they don't have to save me, um, or they don't have to help me in the complaint. But it always comes around that basically they end up having to eat their hat. And they've had to eat their hat many times. Many times they've had to eat their hat, you know, where they say Mr. Fletcher's the problem, not the person that Mr. Fletcher's talking about. And basically they lie for the Russians. Now, I can imagine a few other instances that this is going to happen at. There's probably going to be some bullshit with the security guards at the library and the security guards at the bus station, the security guards at the courthouse, basically the security guards that work for the city. Somewhere there's a bunch of bullshit that they've made up that hasn't flipped around on them yet. Okay, somewhere that there's a bunch of bullshit. I know there's a there's a definite incident where they had hired some questionable people to work for them that to guard the voting machines and things like that. So that it just hasn't flipped around on it yet. But there's a couple of other instances that I can imagine that this is going to happen too. But basically, all of this amounts to a void of injustice that they have levied against action novelist Duane Fletcher in Jacksonville, Florida. And this void of injustice, where they don't listen to Mr. Fletcher's complaints, has allowed the bad guys in his books to flip this stuff around and investigate Mr. Fletcher. They flip it around and they investigate Mr. Fletcher. They flip it around. They investigate Mr. Fletcher. No, he's got it all wrong. The solar panel people. No, we have to save the solar panel people from him. Yeah, we got to save them because I wrote a book about it and stuff like that. Because, I thought that some of that shit was spy equipment, you know. That's what I thought. And apparently they must have thought that too because they had to raid the place later. Um, they've allowed the Serbian assassin that's in this villain character, Serbian assassins, to flip this information around and lean on Mr. Fletcher. Now, this was actually, I believe, is a big ass FARA violation waiting to be uncovered. Foreign Agents Registry Act, where they allowed, I believe that they allowed these people to come and surveil me and do their own surveillance and make up shit and put in fake complaints about me and stuff like that. So I think this is a FARA violation that's waiting to be uncovered also. This right here, these guys were in jail, basically, but there was still some kind of monkey business going on in the street where even though they were in jail, they still had people stalking me around, harassing me after they got through stalking the guy's brother around and harassing him. They started stalking me around too and harassing me. So I wrote a book about it. But basically, this is a void of injustice that they have flipped around, where basically you got Russian, Serbians, you got Chinese spies, Russian hitmen, Serbian assassins, Chinese spies again. Basically, these people have been allowed a void of injustice where they've been allowed to hide behind uh, the complaints that I live in. Now, the thing is that what I believe is that the universal aspect of it is probably drugs. Like one of them is probably in bringing in drugs also, along with his spy equipment or something like that. And and because this person sells drugs, they look the other way. Yeah, they look the other way. And I know somewhere there's a bunch of this stuff on file where basically they have created this void of injustice and they allowed the Russian hitmen to stalk me around too, you know? And then they allowed the Chinese spies to do whatever they wanted to do. You know, they allowed Chinese spies to do whatever they want to do until finally somebody made them get up off their ass and go raid the guy's warehouse. Oh, the thing is, like I'm saying, uh, there's a void of injustice that's been waged, meaning that they vigorously look the other way for the different people in these books. And I believe that possibly one of the people involved is purposely investigating Mr. Fletcher so he can find out who he can get payoffs from. Oh my God, that guy, he's talking about some Serbian guys. Oh my God, I can get a payoff from that guy. Oh my God. Yeah, let me go over there. Oh my God, man. There's a black guy wrote a book, man. Oh my God. And it looks like they're purposely watching Mr. Fletcher with the intent, premeditated intent to field Mr. Fletcher's complaints and monetize them with these alleged Serbian assassins, Russian hitmen, Chinese spies, and that they're watching Mr. Fletcher with one, which means that basically don't trust anything that's said that comes out of Jacksonville about Mr. Fletcher unless you're talking to him yourself. Okay, because what they do is they dress people up like you. They intercept your phone calls and emails and stuff like that. And I think that's the equipment that they was talking about when they raided the place finally after 6 years in this book. So, you got jokes. You got jokes. I got receipts. I got receipts. You got jokes. I got receipts. I got receipts. Yeah, 6 years later, you had to raid this place and stop calling Mr. Fletcher crazy. Yeah. Um, a year later, after Mr. Fletcher wrote this book, all of this stuff happened, and everybody in New York at the tennis match got sick, and the Serbian guy won. Receipt, huh? This is a receipt, not a joke. You think it's a joke because you're dirty. Okay, that's what's going on in Jacksonville. They watch you and then they lie to They lie to other uh, intelligence networks that are investigating the same issue. Like right now, it's probably a bunch of them, because they was telling people that the elections were stolen from them and all this kind of crap. So it's probably a bunch of the law enforcement people in Florida lying to the Secret Service right now. Yeah, I bet you that's like the number one big ass lie, the 800-pound big ass lie in the room it's a bunch of the law enforcement people in Florida lying to Secret Service and people like that. Yeah, that's one of the biggest ass lies that they're probably telling right now. Um, but like I said, this is a void of injustice that we're that has been waged against Mr. Fletcher, where they've allowed these different evil characters that are based on true people, based on real people, somewhat. They've allowed these people to hide. Yeah, it's Gremlin Town, Gremlinville, Gremlinville, Florida. And it's not just Jacksonville. I'm pretty sure it's Miami too. Yeah, Gremlinville, Florida. Um, the thing is that these people need to be brought to justice. Mr. Fletcher, myself, does not need to be harassed any further. At this stage of the game, you got so much different stuff happening that everything becomes questionable, everything becomes suspect, and you can't hide behind this one black guy that wrote an action novel any further. And you should stop trying to, because it's gonna blow up in your face, probably, more than likely. You're gonna have to eat your hat. You're gonna have to eat your hat. I mean, if I had $1 for every time that I've heard that, I'll eat my hat. I'll eat my hat. If I had $1 for every time that I've heard that and they've had to eat that hat, I'd be probably a rich dude. I would have about, let's see, one, two, three. I have about $3, you know, because this is some really serious stuff to be ignoring and taking payoffs from. Very, very serious events. And not only that, but these are very polarized times, to where your snares that you have set for Mr. Fletcher, you become entangled in your own snares and have to end up eating your hat, because everybody in New York got sick at the tennis match after you campaigned to let this guy in the country and all that kind of stuff like that. Right after you campaigned to let the guy in the country, everybody got sick. The guy won. That was the complaint the other tennis players was having, not just Duane Fletcher. Okay, uh, that's what you need to realize. Um, you're gonna have to eat your hat, dude. And you got to stop with this foolishness. And that's what they've been doing here in Florida, is that if you're not paying attention, they'll dress somebody up like you. They're trying to make you sound crazy and stuff like that. Now, the thing is, how can you call Mr. Fletcher if you had to kick the damn door in at this place? 6 years after he wrote, 6 fucking years after he wrote it. And you had to go kick the door in at this place looking for spy equipment and shit like that, or drugs or whatever. How can you call Mr. Fletcher crazy if you let the guy in and everybody got sick? This was you. Yeah, this was you and your party. You can't call me crazy if that's what's going on. So that's another thing that they just keep repeatedly ignoring, and they keep trying to set up some kind of um, bogus complaint against Mr. Fletcher. And these are all complaints that I've levied, and this has created a void. Now, the thing is that this is not just, and the reason why, somebody said, well, why did he suggest that NATO needs to be involved? And I said that United Nations, probably NATO, need to um, covertly investigate law enforcement in Florida. Okay, NATO needs to be involved, because the reason why I said it, because they lie to you. They will lie to you. They lie about stuff, and then they follow around the wrong guy, and they look right at you, but swear to God, you this other guy over here. Excuse me. But basically, that's what goes on. So, I mean, personally, like I said, I think they allowed these people to come in. This is the FAR violation. This is the one that really needs to be addressed, like yesterday, before this gets 6 years old and all of this kind of stuff like that. Before this right here gets 6 damn years old, and they finally end up having to uh, pat somebody down other than Mr. Fletcher and letting them stalk Mr. Fletcher around and hide behind Mr. Fletcher and all of this kind of stuff like that. And that's what they've been doing. This is a FAR violation that they refuse to acknowledge and refuse to talk to me about. But they let the guy stalk me around. That's what I think happened. I think that I was stalked by these people, but they refuse to acknowledge it at Homeland Security, at JSO. It's a joke. Tell them about the spies, Mr. Fletcher. I was like thinking, yeah, I'm gonna write that one down. He said, tell them about the spies. One of the other cops was making a joke like I was crazy or something. But like I said, how can you call me crazy if with your fucking hat in your mouth? How can you call me crazy with your fucking hat in your mouth and you had to kick the door in at the place I wrote about 6 fucking years ago? You can't call me crazy. You're just talking. You're just talking amongst yourselves because you're dirty. That's what this basically goes on. And it's annoying. It's very annoying because every once in a while something happens. It's some kind of blatant disrespect, uh, blatant stalking, blatant harassment that goes unchecked. And it's like, to me, it's like to me, it's like to me that basically they're not just doing this to me, you know, they're doing this to other people too. And the thing is, like I was saying, okay, this is because but first I'm gonna say this right here. Okay, there was a guy dressed up like me that was bootlegging my movie at that one time that I was talking about before. Is there somebody walking past his mother's house? No, no, there's nobody walking past. Is there somebody stalking him around? No, there's nobody stalking him around. But he wants the fucking money for this. He wants to soak up all my money for this. You know what I'm saying? There's nobody harassing your guy that you got in the street. That's the common sense of it. Not to mention the fact that basically when you're dealing with these dirty people here, they're gonna call you a goddamn lie. The guy that you got bootlegging, where is it here? The guy that you got bootlegging my shit, they're gonna call him a damn lie. Yeah, the villain, the dirty cops involved, probably the governor. They're gonna call your guy, the guy that's what. This is a big ass loophole that they have levied for themselves, and he can't say nothing. Why? Because he stole the shit off my computer or something, and was out selling it. So he can't say nothing. And they'll it probably will be quietly, but they'll quietly pull your guy to the side that you have pretending to be me, and they're gonna call him a damn lie, which fucks up the whole rest of the free world that's trying to investigate these other people. Okay, so that's pretty much all I had to say. Oh, y'all need to start paying attention. I want to say a thing again. Um, Somebody bootlegged this one time before, got dressed up like me, had a copy of my movie. If you see this shit happening now, please come back and tell me what's going on. If you see it happening again, please come back and tell Mr. Fletcher what's going on. Because see, the thing is, um, they do have somebody pretending to be me, and the person has just not been discovered yet. Okay, this person hasn't been discovered yet. Like this one right here, the feds got the guys that they was bootlegging the movie and stuff, and that was a trap that was levied against Mr. Fletcher also. Myself, who I'm Mr. Fletcher, that was a trap that was levied against me. Now, they told everybody that I was bootlegging, but the feds walked right past me in the parking lot and they arrested the guy that was bootlegging. This is my movie. I'm Duane Fletcher. So apparently, at times, they don't do that mix switch stuff. But if you see them out, please give me a call. Please give me a call so we can get to the bottom of this. Because I can guarantee you, like I said, your guy that you have pretending to be Duane Fletcher, is there people walking past his mother's house making threats? No. Uh, is you know, I was talking to the cop before. I was like, the last time when I first wrote this, as soon as I wrote the word "the end," I walked outside to smoke a cigarette, and there was Asian guys walking up and down the block. They had a dirty cop with them, like he was watching their back or something. This was a threat that they was levying against me because I wrote this book. You know what I'm saying? Is that kind of shit happening to your guy? No, it's not. It's bullshit. But yet and still you want to soak up the money that I get for filming documentary movies and writing books and stuff. And that's a really wicked injustice there within itself alone. That's another injustice. That basically the person is equivalent of a spy that wants you to think that they're the hero in some of my action novels and things like that. And that you are uh, blessing this person with money that probably should go to me. Um, it's annoying to even think about it, but yet and still you have to address the issues because there has been a wall of injustice levied against me. Okay, levied against Mr. Fletcher, Duane Fletcher. And the reason why I'm talking like this because earlier today I was practicing an affidavit that I'm going to read for a lawsuit. And that's why I keep saying Mr. Fletcher, because earlier this morning I was practicing reading an affidavit for a lawsuit against certain law enforcement here in Jacksonville, Florida, because they keep flipping these complaints that Mr. Fletcher comes up with. They flip it around and they run off to save the bad guy. Yeah, that's what they've been doing. Like if I wrote that I found Osama bin Laden, if I said out there the law enforcement in Jacksonville, it would take them 5, 6 years to get around to catching Osama bin Laden. You know why? I'm gonna tell you why. Because they're dirty and they're taking some money some kind of way to let him sit there. And until somebody else complains about it, it doesn't exist. If they get ready to lose their job for being dirty, then it exists. Then the problem exists. And the thing is that, like I said, I don't feel as though um this is right. This process is right that they're doing, and I need to be made whole again. Yeah, yeah, I need to file a lawsuit because it's like um I've been practicing this affidavit that I'm going to read for reading probably in front of a judge. I'm waiting to get a few more bits of proof that this is what they've been doing. And like I said, it's systematically, repeatedly, over and over again. It's certain law enforcement officials here that basically have flipped my complaints around to suit themselves so they can take payoffs. And that's the reason why they're watching me. Okay? This shit started. This shit started 15 fucking years ago with them flipping shit around. It started 15 years, but yet and still, Mr. Fletcher has never been arrested. Mr. Fletcher has never been arrested. No. Mr. Fletcher has never been arrested. He's been looked at, watched, harassed. He's never been arrested. Mr. Fletcher has never been arrested. Why is that? Because Mr. Fletcher's never been arrested because Mr. Fletcher is the hero in these books and not the antagonist. Okay? And the thing is that it it needs to be a point where these people are allowed to go no further flipping these complaints around because like I said, the country is almost at war as it is right now. And I'm not talking about drug dealers every 5 minutes where who's got the biggest gold chain, who's got the biggest tires on their car. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. um I'm talking about Chinese spies. I'm talking about Russian hitmen. I'm talking about Serbian assassins and things like that. And this is some very important material. It's too important for you to put it on the back burner to take a bribe any further. Any further. It has to be a point where you are punished or forced to stop, just the same way that they finally forced you to raid the damn warehouse that I was talking about in this book. Okay? You're gonna eat your hat. Yeah, you're gonna eat your hat, dude. I guarantee it. I guarantee I've seen you eat your fucking hat before. I've seen you eat your hat before. You're gonna have to eat your hat. It's coming. It's on the way. You're gonna have to eat your hat. So stop it. And that's all I had to say today. And if you get a chance to check out BLURB, Duane Fletcher, blurb.com. The Nibblenecks talks about the Russian hitmen. Uh, let's see what else we got here. The Battle of Fletcher. This is kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a really good book. Except for in this one, the Russians are the bad guys. Okay. And of course, the one that's creating all the controversy, The Black Hand. The Black Hand. This is a really good book, also. Okay, so this was a part 2 coming out of this. Very soon, very soon. Just got through writing it, just got through editing it, and I'm sending it off in the process of sending it off to my publisher. This book will be on sale also on blurb.com very soon. So check it out. Okay. That's all I had to say. All right. Duane Fletcher signing off.